Hello, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. The way you look at things is the most powerful force in shaping your life. This quote by John O'Donoghue is how today's guest begins her book, Your Name is Not Anxious. Dr Stephanie Dowrick goes on to write, shifting your relationship with anxiety, if it is uncomfortable or limiting, shifts the way you see yourself. It also shifts the way you see and interact with other people. Understanding yourself and what's happening in your mind is never about your mind only. It's never about your body and your mind only. It's about your stance in the world. Dr. Dowrick's underlying philosophy is this: you are more than your anxiety, however controlling that may currently be. It is with absolute pleasure I'm really excited to talk with today's guest, and I'd really love to introduce you to Dr. Stephanie Dowrick. She has had a distinguished and continues to have a distinguished career in both publishing and writing, as well as being a lifelong social justice activist, an interfaith pioneer, and a distinguished mental health researcher. She is an award-winning author. Her most recent book is Your Name is Not Anxious, a very personal guide to putting anxiety in its place. Dr. Dowrick is joining us from Sydney. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the podcast today. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us.
Oh, Jodi, I'm so pleased to do this because you and I both know anxiety can be such a trap. And you and I both share this kind of mission almost, that people would have some less of it in their lives and some degree at least of greater freedom. So I'm very happy to be talking with you, Jodi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we share this same mission, and our philosophies are so similar. And I absolutely loved your book, and I do what my librarian as a child would have really disliked, which is I write notes in them, I highlight, I don't dog-ear pages. I can't quite bring myself to do that, but I absolutely loved it. I thank you for writing it. You write it with such compassion because of your own experience, with such expertise because of your research and your expertise in mental health. You share your own story and others, and you wrote that you were motivated to write the book, particularly after witnessing what a family member had gone through and struggled with respect to their experience of anxiety and your own. And I wonder if you could start by sharing some of what you've been through and also what you've seen in the particular family member that really got you back at the laptop writing this next book of yours.
Yes, that's such a good question. It's a big question too, but just before I get to it, I love it when I'm at a writer's event or something similar and people come up and the book they asked me to sign is already littered with their notes, because I really want people to make the books that I write, make them their own. And, when somebody's having a conversation in the margins, they've made it their own, and that's a marvelous thing. So your question is interesting because I hadn't thought I would really write another psychological book. The couple of books that I wrote prior to Your Name is Not Anxious were more about our quest for meaning, our spirituality in the most grounded sense of that, how we are finding the who am I and what am I questions in our lives. But I was provoked to write this book by this intense suffering that I witnessed in a beloved family member. And I think her suffering, unfortunately, is quite typical of these times. So I'll just describe her characteristics, but of course these could apply to a whole lot of people. She's a high achiever, incredibly hard on herself, very thoughtful and kind towards other people, less adept at being thoughtful and kind towards herself, had suffered some bullying quite intense and unjust bullying. All bullying is unjust. And the stresses of that, plus the stresses that everybody is experiencing in this very strange, pivotal time that we're living in. And I really emphasize that in the book. We don't develop anxiety within ourselves as individuals in a vacuum. We live in an extremely anxious society. So all those things accumulated with my family member, and along with that level of anxiety, that extremely high level of stress, bringing on the cortisol flooding and so on, and the loss of more constructive thinking that always goes with heightened anxiety. Along with all of that, of course, comes depression. Now, she had the opportunity, living in a big city in Australia, and having the opportunity also to access private medicine, private psych hospital. So she was getting the best help that she could, or that is available. And it was, in my view, as a long-time mental health researcher and a former psychotherapist, I could see that it was inadequate. Now, that was very, very painful to realize, because I was on the sidelines. She had an extremely caring psychiatrist and so on. But what was missing, both from the hospitalizations, which certainly saved her life, because let's face it, high levels of anxiety are life-limiting. Extreme levels of anxiety are life-threatening. I think you'd probably agree with that, Jodi.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking serious illness here. So there were times she had to be hospitalized, and that saved her life. But what was mostly addressed was the depression rather than the anxiety. And certainly what was not addressed was the stressors. So when I came to write this book, Your Name is Not Anxious, I wanted to do a couple of things. The title itself tells a story, doesn't it? Your name is not anxious. And I wanted to just create that little bit of space where somebody could step back and acknowledge, I'm flooded with anxiety. I'm also flooded with cortisol. But anxiety is not all of who I am.
Yes.
So we go to the question of identity, which has been a big theme for me in all my books. What do we identify with, and how do we describe myself to me?
Yes.
Yeah? But I could see that she was so overwhelmed with these experiences, and also the lack of effective, not just effective help, but the real feeling of hope. I say in my book, and I quote Andrew Solomon here, that when we are in a state of extreme anxiety, or when we're in a state of high levels of depression, we live in the moment in an awful way.
Yeah.
We can't believe that it will really change. That's because hope is depressed.
Yes.
In us. Yeah. So what I was very keen to achieve, and then I found the research so fascinating, because in the years since I've written a psychological book, we've had great insights from neuroscience and so on. So what I came to see was that unless someone gets the knowledge which is available, that first of all, they need to think about the stress in their lives, particularly the things they say impossible to change.
Yes.
Then they need to know exactly what's happening in the body. It's not enough just to go to CBT and think about your thoughts and blah, blah. Your thoughts are not functioning well when you're that unwell. They are not. And somebody telling you to think a bit more positively is just, it kind of insults you.
Yeah.
You just think, what does that person know or understand? So this knowledge is so available. And so I want this book to be self-therapy, not self-help.
Yes.
So acknowledging the stressors, knowing what's happening in the body, knowing how to calm and soothe the body already changes your thinking, or at least gives a little bit of a match to the candle of hope.
Yes. Oh, a match to the candle of hope is what anyone who is right now struggling terribly with anxiety or depression is looking for. And I've been in that place where that candle, there was no spark, there was no candle, there was no match, there was no flame. My depression that resulted from undiagnosed anxiety took me to the point where I didn't care if I went to sleep and never woke up.
Yes.
And I identify similarly with your family member in that that's probably how I would be described. I've achieved a lot, worked really harder on myself than anyone else, kind of give the shirt off my back to my friends and family and to strangers. And
Yes.
and I think that, a lot of listeners will be able to identify with parts or some of that. And I think this idea that it is so treatable. There's so much we can do when we do understand it. Understanding isn't enough. And I know that you really reinforce it in your book, that it's the understanding combined with action. But there is life on the other side. We learn to live with it, to settle it, to put it in its place, and to create some space between who we identify as and the anxiety that comes with us. And you speak about that identification. Why do you think we do identify so strongly with it, as if it is all of who we are? Because until we can make that separation, we're unable to really see ourselves in a different way and to be able to put more space between us and what we're experiencing. Is it common for people to really identify so strongly with it? And what's the first step away from it?
It absolutely is very, very common because, first of all, we don't understand our own complexity all that well. So when something really dominates our lives, limits our lives, floods our emotions, as anxiety and depression do, and lowers our mood, but also lowers our powers of analysis, when that happens, of course, we're going to be identifying with what seems to be dictating our lives. So along with that state of mind or that lowering of mood comes often very bleak thoughts. So at the same time as our mood is lowered, we hear a voice in our minds saying, you're hopeless, they don't really know who you are, no one will ever understand you, you will never be better. They may think you're a success, but actually, you're a failure. All that kind of extraordinarily eroding self-talk. Now, I ask people in the book to draw their attention to how they're speaking to themselves, and perhaps to say to themselves, would I say that to my best friend? Mm-hmm. Would I say that? And of course you wouldn't. But when all of that is going on, there's no escape from identifying. And I call anxiety in this book several things, but I call it a colonizer.
Yes.
It colonizes your sense of self. It invades and colonizes and takes over and has a kind of false authority. Other people think, or you might try, or so and so, but I anxiety know better, or I depression know better. So it's a colonizer. It's also a liar. What you tell yourself when you're in that very low mood is probably very far from the truth. And I address that, and I address your power to vent as well as to challenge very, very directly. And then the third thing that is perhaps more important than anything else, anxiety and depression are robbers. They are robbing us of our power. So how do we get back some power to know that I feel dreadful? I feel as though this will never change. I mean, my anxiety might be OCD. My anxiety may be social anxiety. My anxiety may be around my body. My anxiety may be for my child. My anxiety may be about my child. My anxiety may be about my old age, my illness. There's so many dimensions to this. But what they all have in common is that somehow we need to bring back, not just to our minds, but to the whole of our being, a sense that of I can somehow deal with this little bit by little bit, knowing that each step forward is saving me from another step back. Yep.
Yes.
It's really important. So we're talking about hope again. But the hope comes from this glimmer of re-empowerment, which is exactly why I call the book self-therapy and not just self-help. And that inclination that I have to self-therapy has a very big basis in my whole ethos about life. One of my huge interests is the whole kind of ethical side of mental health. And I feel rather fierce that the social determinants or the social implications that affect our mental health are so often brushed by. But I've also learned over many, many years that an ethically based psychotherapist, as I was, and an ethically based mental health researcher, as I still am, what we can really do is make available insights that the ordinary reader can grasp in an instant if you present them in a really coherent way. So I have emergency measures, and I have other, many, many ideas for when you're not in a state of emergency. But what I'm really, really keen to do is to say, please get professional help. If you're very unwell, you must get professional help. But even if you have professional help, as my family member did, you also need to know how to help yourself. Need to know how to offer yourself quite strong therapeutic interventions.
Yes. It's the action that needs to be taken, but it can feel so overwhelming that it's hard to know where to start. I wonder if you could share with us, and I reflect, Stephanie, I was hospitalised. It was funny, actually. It was at a lunch yesterday, 50th birthday celebration for a friend, and we were talking about our babies when they were little and sleep and all this kind of stuff. And I was just talking about our daughter and essentially how she didn't sleep, and I had postnatal depression and anxiety, and we went to sleep school. And I say that in air quotes, but really it was about my mental health. That was a stay in hospital about supporting my mental health and the other women that were there. And I just felt like I was drowning, and that hospitalisation was a circuit breaker for me. It didn't solve really all my problems. It was a step forward.
Yes.
For people who are listening or loving someone who is feeling so overwhelmed, where's a good place to start in helping themselves?
Yeah. Okay. So a very good place to start is just and I say just, again with air quotes, it's allowing yourself to know that there are possibilities. You may feel no one can understand you. You may feel that no one can help you. So I address exactly that. So let's go back again to the stressors in your life. Yours with your baby and your postnatal depression were very obvious, and you had to have a circuit breaker. I had two children 14 months apart, and my second child was premature, and I don't think I managed a night's sleep for years. So I'm very sympathetic with, oh my gosh, I'm very sympathetic. But I'm very sympathetic with all states of high anxiety. Now, one thing to know is that when your cortisol levels are very high because you're living with too much stress, that will do several things. First of all, it will disrupt your sleep. It will make it very, very difficult to relax. So almost simultaneously, we need to look at the stressors. We need to look where some help may be possible. And I actually enumerate these steps in the book. I feel so strongly that we just need it to be very, very clear. So we need to look at where a small difference can be made. We need to ask for help, even if we think there's no help that will really help, especially if we think there's no help that will really help. And we need absolutely somehow to soothe the body, because that brings down those cortisol levels that not only make it hard to sleep, they make it hard to lose weight, they make you very jittery, they make you very reactive rather than, your usual darling rational self.
Yes, yes.
You can even remember him or her. Yes. So those things need to happen, and it's often really, really good to work that out with someone else, because you'll be full of, oh, but I can't, oh, but I'll never, oh, it will always, yeah? So that's part of catastrophic thinking. And while your cortisol levels are high, your executive functions at the front of your brain are not working so well, and you need to be able to bring that down so that you can soothe yourself. So soothing yourself needs to become an extremely high priority. That doesn't mean sitting in meditation, because when we're very agitated, that's not going to work. However, a very simple breathing practice. I give many examples of guided meditation, a little, just not even a guided meditation, just almost like a little self-hypnosis. At this very moment, I am sitting in my chair. I can feel my bottom held by the chair. I can feel my back held by the chair. In this moment, I am aware of my body held by the chair, and nothing is asked of me. Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go to drama school to learn this, but we do need to know that this kind of self-soothing is possible. And then we need to practice it when we're not feeling too terrible.
Yes.
If we save it up only for the dreadful moments, we will have much less confidence that it will work for us.
Yes.
And Jodi, the last thing I want to say in that too, and I think that you and I can have a little talk about this, when people are in a very bad way, they need medical help.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely they do. And I take medication for my anxiety. I didn't for a long, long time. it was absolutely life-changing for me. And what was it's really interesting. I look back and I, with clarity now, I reflect, and I was reading a book the other day and it said, hindsight is best served earlier. I loved that. However, it's not. And I was thinking back to how long I spent in therapy, over years and years and years in and out of therapy with an incredible psychotherapist who I just am always so thankful to. But I didn't want to take medication. I didn't want to take it. I felt like I was giving up. I felt like if I just work harder, I recognise now that I wasn't able to think rationally. I didn't know enough. I didn't understand. The doctors would say if you were a diabetic, you'd take insulin. And I said, well, actually, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably do more exercise. But I know. I just felt that I was failing. That's how I felt. I felt if I take medication, I am failing. And Peter said to me one day, the kids were little. Even when I was hospitalised, they said, you need this. And I was breastfeeding and I said, no, I won't take it. And in hindsight, again, I have had my time over knowing what I know now. I would have ended breastfeeding and taken the medication straight away. But yes. Peter said to me, I can see how much you're suffering. It's not only affecting you, it's affecting him. He said, it's affecting me. I'm worried that it will ultimately affect the kids. He was probably thinking it was already, understandably. He said, would you try it for us, if not for yourself? And I said, oh my goodness, it just gave me such a different lens. I said yes. And I recently had a new script done with a new doctor. I couldn't get into my usual doctor. He said, how are you going? I said, fantastic. I use all my skills. I look after myself. I can think about what I need. He said, what are you like when you don't take it? I said, I wouldn't know. I never miss it. He said, have you thought about going off it? And I said, I think on occasion about making an adjustment perhaps. But then I think, why would I mess around with something that's saved me? Why would I mess around? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you write about them. Please share your thoughts with us.
Oh, gosh. Look, I will share my thoughts because it's not only my family member. I've taken medication at different points, and I take it now largely for pain, but also for anxiety. And the shape of my anxiety, when I was younger, it was OCD-ish around locks, partly because I have this huge rescuer archetype living inside me, which may not surprise anybody who's read any of my books. And I think it was activated very much around my children. Was I taking proper care of them? Had I locked the door? Had I kept our home safe? Had I blah, blah, blah? And we know none of this is rational. But it's very preoccupying. So not rational, very preoccupying. So I certainly took an antidepressant that was, particularly good for anxiety at that time. And actually, anxiety and depression are pretty co-joined twins, don't you think?
Yes.
Somebody who's very anxious has at least some mood fluctuation, and somebody who's depressed invariably has some degree of anxiety. So let's just assume them together. But some antidepressants are particularly good with anxiety. And I now live with chronic pain because I have had lots of stress fractures in my spine, which is pretty horrid. Yes. And so I take an antidepressant now, and I say it's for pain, but actually it's also really for anxiety, because if I have people around me who I'm particularly responsible for, or I feel a responsibility towards, family, friends, close friends, and also social situations in our world, which is a troubled world at the moment, I can feel the inadequacy of what I'm doing. And that's a kind of anxiety that is very erosive, actually, and disempowering. So I'm very much for that kind of conversation. I am very much for the kind of help that you can get. Sometimes it just takes the edge off enough to quieten your fears so that you can begin to think more coherently.
Yeah.
And you can begin to think more compassionately, and you can begin to think forward with that forward direction. I'm doing gestures, which of course listeners can't see, but never mind. You will hear it in my voice. And I do quote again Andrew Solomon, who is one of the best writers on depression. And in my book, Your Name Is Not Anxious, I quote Andrew Solomon when people say, "Oh, are you still taking medication? But you seem fine." And he says, "I seem fine because I'm still taking my medication."
Yes, and that's the challenge is, and I've been there too, and many listeners may have as well. When I was diagnosed with depression, and I originally took antidepressants long before children, when in my mid-20s, when depression was the reason I went to seek help for my mental health. Once I felt good again, I thought I didn't need them. Yes. And I weaned myself off, only to find that, oopsies, okay, this problem is still here. And I set about on a mission for a long time to kind of understand and solve the problem. And anyway, the rest is history. But yes, it is.
Very good that you raise this. It's very good that you raise this, and it's very good that you raise it with such honesty. Why on earth should somebody be ashamed or uncomfortable by acknowledging that even to call it mental health is a furphy? I mean, our mind does not exist somewhere along the corridor from our body. So when I talk about soothing the body, what I'm trying to say is that body-mind is intricately connected. So it is connected to our digestive system. Lots of people with high anxiety, have IBS or they have, a whole lot of other autoimmune things and so on and so on. Or we can somatize. We can feel we've got headaches all the time, or our neck aches, or we have what are called butterflies in the stomach. So what we're doing in taking a medication, if it's properly prescribed, and that's critical, it has to be properly prescribed. It can't be recommended by your best friend. It can't be recommended by your psychologist. It needs to be medically prescribed. And it's just part of the picture. Yes. But again, can give you just that little bit of space so that you can come back into, I am a complex, interesting person. My name is not.
Anxiety. That's right. I love that we've had a chance to talk about this, because it's something that's raised a lot. I might be speaking to a school community of parents at an event in an evening, and parents will approach me later and share how they themselves have felt really stigmatized or ashamed about their own journey with medication, or they're contemplating, supporting their child who's a teenager and is looking at making a decision around medication with the parent, with the GP, with the psychiatrist, and feeling really scared, really fearful about what does this mean, and there's this stigma, and and then there's talk that there's overprescription. I can't speak to that. Haven't looked at that research, but it is not the panacea. It is not the solver of all problems. It's part of a holistic approach. Yes. Some people need it, some people don't. It's very individual. Yes,
it's very individual. What we also need, of course, is insight.
Yeah.
And that's what my whole book is about, insight. You know, do you need more insight around this or that or this or that? We need insight. We need to know why our anxiety has this shape. We need to know why our anxiety affects us most in this situation. We need to understand just a little bit of how the triggers and stressors were part of our history, and where they're not only most uncomfortable, but where they're least uncomfortable. We need to know a little bit more, or see a little bit more clearly, where are the situations that I'm coping with quite well? What can I learn from those strengths as well? You know, so it's not just a path of investigation about where I'm seems to be functioning worst. It's also a path of investigation as to where I'm functioning best. Because everybody with a story like yours, Jodi, is a courageous person. Yours is a story of courage. Yours is a story of meaning. I can't say that to you with more heart than I'm doing. When I see how much courage it takes to stay alive and to get well, or get a little bit weller, when your mind is really not your best friend, then you know, I wrote that book for you.
You wrote that book for me. Sorry.
No.
You did, and it really speaks to me. And I guess I'm asking myself now, where are these tears coming from? And I think it's really nice to hear someone say what you said to me, that it has taken a lot of courage, and it's taken reaching out for a lot of help.
Yeah.
And then to feel so strongly that perhaps I can help someone else through my work, through the podcast.
Yes.
And people, and it's such a privilege. It is honestly such a privilege to have conversations like these, and I take so much from them myself every time. I'm always learning something, and I know listeners are always learning something new, or having a different lens to look at things, feeling a little bit more ease about their challenges, a little bit more hopeful, more equipped, more insights, more ideas, and more direction. And your book, honestly, when I saw it, I don't know how I first came across it, but I mean, I'm all over anything to do with anxiety. So as soon as it was released, just an absolute, it's you know, I've got it in front of me here in the studio, and Magda Szubanski has written an endorsement, and it's at the top of the book, and it says, "Read this book; it's a lifesaver." You're everything about who you are and the journey you've taken in life, and the learning on your own personal journey and professional journey comes together in this book in such a way that you feel seen, you feel understood, and you feel much better equipped for having read it. And as much as I could talk to you all afternoon, I would love for you to share. So first of all, I want to say thank you for what you shared with me. Thank you for saying what you said. Thank you for writing the book for me and for everyone else who has the pleasure of reading it. Can you share with us? Go on.
Can I interrupt? What you share also with other people, Jodi, is vulnerability. And I think that when we are prepared to share from that vulnerable place, while also holding some semblance of hope that our vulnerability is not, and trust that our vulnerability is also what connects us to other people. So it's not like a scar. It's like it's almost like a superpower that we have acknowledged our vulnerability, and that we are somehow, through a kind of alchemical process, we're also matching it to a strength.
Yes. I often feel I have what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover. And I probably will after recording this. I'll probably feel, just that sense of, I have sort of, shown, I don't recall ever getting teary like that on the podcast, but I'm okay with that because I'm on this journey. I'm still and will always be on this journey, and I feel proud of myself for overcoming so much fear and anxiety about starting this and doing this, and that it's a journey for me like it is for everyone else. And if me sharing more openly and sharing more vulnerably helps others to find that within themselves, or to feel like, oh, well, Jodi still struggles with this. This is still a huge part of her life, but everything Jodi's doing, Jodi's sharing, so I can maybe take a little bit of that and do that too. And not that I've got all the answers, I don't. But every conversation like this shines more light and brings more new and different ways of looking at a really big challenge for so many of us. And so I feel very thankful, and I know that this episode will stand out for so many because of what we've talked about and the way the conversation has evolved.
Yes, because it's a real conversation that you and I have had, that comes in this present moment, but draws on our history, and that takes us forward.
Yes,
and it was the courage of my family member, which is where our conversation started, despite the horror. And, there were times when she didn't know if she had enough courage to stay alive. I take this very, very seriously. And even if somebody listening thinks, well, I'm not that bad, if our lives are limited by anxiety, or if the things we'd like to do are limited by, a social anxiety or a fear of what other people might say about us, or that we imagine we can read their thoughts even though they haven't said what a hopeless person we are. That's surely what they're thinking. All those kind of dramas that we're familiar with. If that's in any way curtailing your freedom to be your complex, marvelous self, and then, move forward.
Yes.
Lovingly.
Yes.
Lovingly.
And with a lot of kindness for ourselves, which is something that you shared. Absolutely. So much kindness and self-compassion, because we are complex, we are unique, life is messy. We're all juggling lots of different balls and lots of different, phases and stages of life, and the, ups and downs, and so no wonder it's hard.
No wonder it's hard, but it's also wonderful.
Yes.
And when anxiety or depression deprives us of the wonderful, then we need to do something about it.
Yes, absolutely we do. Yeah. Absolutely we do.
Thank you very much, Jodi.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And please share. I'm so excited for you and for readers in the United States, listeners in the United States, because Stephanie's book is being published and launching in the United States in January 2025 through St. Martin's Press. And so please put in a pre-order as soon as that's available. Keep an eye out for that publication in the United States. And of course, it's well and truly available here in Australia. And I really encourage you to jump online and have a look, because if you've even taken one little pearl of wisdom, which I know you will have taken many from this conversation, just wait till you get your hands on the book. It's one of those ones that you'll put by your bedside. You can read it from start to finish if you want, but you'll also pick it up and put it down. How can people connect with you online and read more of your work and your other books and find you kind of out there on the www, please, Stephanie?
All right. Well, that's easy. So my name is my name is not anxious. My name is Stephanie Dowrick, one word, .com.
Easy.
So I've got a website, stephaniedowrick.com, and you'll probably put this up, will you, Jodi?
Yes, we will. Yes.
And then I've also got a public Facebook page, which is, go to Stephanie Dowrick, and it's a public Facebook page. And I haven't been posting much there recently, but generally I'm a pretty good poster.
Yes.
And and so I'm easily reached that way. And if people want to join the mailing list, of course, that's easily possible on my website.
This is a savvy group of listeners. So with the information you've shared, they will be able to find you and, become a part of your orbit beyond listening here on the podcast. The book is Your Name Is Not Anxious, a very personal guide to putting anxiety in its place. Stephanie, it has been such a joy to spend this time with you. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your book. And thank you again for being such a support to me today and for having a really authentic conversation about a really big challenge. I know it'll help people carry their challenge even just a little bit more lightly after hearing us have our conversation today. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jodi. It's been a delight to meet you. A delight. Thank you.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you. Thank you so much. What a joy that was to speak with Stephanie. Honestly, I never take for granted the opportunity that this podcast brings to me. And I really know that you'll take so much from that. So I thank you for your time. Please, if you're not sure where to check the podcast notes, they will always be with the podcast episode on your platform, or you can always go to my website, drjodirichardson.com.au, click the link to podcasts, and all of the episodes are there, and you'll see the show notes there as well. Thanks again for your time. Thank you so much. Love to hear your thoughts and what you've taken from this conversation. Hit me up on Instagram, or you can always drop me an email at hello@drjodirichardson.com.au. Thanks again. I'll be back with you again next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.